Journeys Ahead, Aurora Legends, Number 3, The Remhead Bust, written and narrated by T.S. ProArt. Ugh, this stupid Rem case is getting on my nerves, Blue. It's been getting worse and worse by the day. Jaida angrily groaned as she hung upside down off her bed while kicking her legs up into the air. You can say that again, Freckles. The more crooks we stop, the more Rem Sangson and the crew tend to find in their system. Voyd replied as he stood before Jet in the corner of their shared room. Swiping upon a city map hologram presented by Jet's screen, Voyd pinpointed all of his and Jaida's takedowns, 7 of which relating to the Rem drug, scattered about and unlinked. Could someone fill me in on what exactly this Rem stuff is? I know it's a drug, but what makes it so bad compared to the others? Kot questioned as both him and Nock were sitting on the floor playing with Pofnu to help ease her boredom. It enhances your bloodstream and energy rates to such a level that it could put one into a cardiac arrest. It's essentially a steroid that makes you unable to get tired, while straining your muscles into a stronger state. It's forced adrenaline, basically. Nock explained with a tired yawn as he and Pofnu played tug-of-war with an old rag, the fox of which using her mouth instead of her hands to do so. That and it supposedly makes the user feel really good. It's dangerous. And frankly, I'm sick of it. We gotta find and put a stop to its distribution, Blue. Otherwise things could get more hectic out there. Nodding, Voyd closed the hologram and approached his bed, where all of their gear was tossed upon from the night prior. I agree. We should probably find and ask Winona's dad about all the articles and junk he's collected on the subject. You got the address to her house, right? The spark asked Jaida, with a stern tone to his voice, as he began to slip on one of his shiny blue boots. Yeah, she lives in the suburban area according to the address she gave us after lunch. Are we going in awkward couple style or incognito? Jaida asked as she pulled out a notebook slip from her pocket that had a pencil-written address on it. Incognito. I don't really want our first impression with Winona's dad to be about drugs. Voyd replied as he placed his mother's battle helmet around his head, while taking a glance at Jaida, who was wearing a cat-themed pajama set. Fair enough. Looks like we'll be missing dinner again, guys. Jaida said down to her cousin and the others, who all nodded their heads. Just be careful and look out for one another. And don't keep us up till 4 again. Nock gruffed with the tone of an annoyed mom. But before a reply came, the sound of Voyd and Jaida warping off into the night was heard for all to hear. Heh, teenagers. Kot chuckled about their sudden departure, always finding the two of them amusing. Yeah, you can say that again. The short mechanic gruffed, his voice already tired from the long day. Tug harder! Pofnu yapped as her head shook like a bulldog. You're gonna break my arm, Nock retorted as Kot just watched them both back and forth. Mr. Rogers' arm strength is approximately at 45% capacity. The point of a joint break is at 62%. Therefore, you can strain yourself for another 16%. Jet out of nowhere said as he simply smiled with a flash screen face. You are terrifyingly specific, Nock muttered while Pofnu took her chance to tug harder. And you are terrifyingly bald for such a young age. Coming to a slow stop along the curb of a suburban house, an old, dingy family minivan parked and powered off with a rickety stutter. With a tired huff and gruff, a man opened its passenger door, having to use his foot to merely get it to swing all the way out. Pulling himself from its confines, the man wobbled into the thin snow, carrying 4 bags of groceries in each hand. Sighing, he kicked the door to his car closed and began to hobble up towards his little home that lined a wall of several other suburban houses, resting just outside the southern city side. The man's residence wasn't anything fancy. 1 floor, 5 rooms, white paint chipping off the exterior walls. It was your typical southern side home. Another day done, Theodore. Another day done. Time to kick back, relax, maybe help Winona with some homework, and sleep. The man muttered to himself, trying not to slip and fall upon the ice. Theodore was his name. Theodore Specs. Theodore was dressed in a light brown coat, a light beige collared shirt, a deep indigo blue tie, and light blue jeans. He was wearing small glasses and brown shoes as well. Like his daughter, he was an average human. He had light blonde hair styled in a slightly wavy, tousled fashion that curled in the front. His facial features include light-colored skin, a slightly rounded face, a light, glowing orange-colored set of eyes that was brought upon by the Night of 1,000 Flames. He even appeared to have a short, trimmed, and light-colored beard. Making it halfway across his front lawn path, Theodore slowed his shivering march to a steady pace and took in a long breath. It had been a long day for the man, one of endless errands and other boring adult adventures that he truthfully didn't want to think about. Letting his arms rest and shoulders slump, Theodore yawned wide and tilted his head up towards the frosty night sky. Beside him stood an old tree in the yard, its leaves dead and branches twisted, holding an old tire swing Winona would occasionally rest upon. Opening his eyes again, Theodore gazed into the spider-leg-akin cluster of branches, and immediately fell still. There, perched upon a thick branch just above him, were the Cosmic Angel and Blue Bullet, looking down upon him with their glowing blue and orange eyes. "Hi!" the angel exclaimed with a positive tone and wave, leaving the Theodore shouting and dropping his groceries, landing rear first into the snow. "God, what the hell?" he yelled in shock, while the bombastic duo leapt forwards and landed on the ground before him. "Whoa, hey, relax, buddy. Oh, you're not in trouble. We're not gonna hurt you," the Blue Bullet assured, as he extended a hand out for the wide-eyed man. "Yeah, we're just hiding in your tree to avoid drawing suspicion. Sorry for the scare." The angel apologized with a nervous tone, before she projectile warped Theodore's groceries from the soggy grounds to be on his front porch steps. "You're getting really good at that," Voyd complimented, his voice calm and proud. "Thank you," Jaida said back, full of eagerness and expectation. "Whoa, Cosmic Angel, new guy, what's going on? Why are you all the way out here in the suburbs?" Taking Voyd's hand and getting back up, Theodore scanned his eyes up and down upon the heroes of Aurora with continuous shock and disbelief. His first thoughts were a series of whys and hows, and the second of which being that they were much shorter in person than he had imagined. "We're here because someone told us you had tons of articles in relation to the Rem routes within Aurora. We were wondering if we could take a look in hopes to maybe find a lead." Voyd stated their purpose, sounding determined in the mission at hand. Looking from him and then to the angel, Theodore bit the inside of his cheek with a whirlwind of thoughts. Who told them? How and why? Then, a good-natured instinct took hold, one that was a call to act, to help. Wait here. Give me one moment," Theodore asked before storming into his home in a cold sweat. Entering his room, the man quickly went to his closet. Once in reach, he threw its old wooden grate door open and began to rummage through old junk that sat in the back of its confines. "Oh, no, there you are. You, and you, and you," he muttered, snagging all the Rem-related articles he could find, the ones he remembered at least. With several pieces of paper now grasped in his arms, Theodore turned around to leave his house, but suddenly screamed, seeing that the two vigilantes were now standing inside the room behind him. "Go, pieces!" he cried, throwing the papers into the air from fright. "Dad, you okay?" The voice of Winona came, sounding far off within the house, Presumably the basement, the duo thought, as Jaida and Voyd quickly caught each paper and skimmed through them. "Fine, honey. Just saw a mouse is all," Theodore called back, whilst readjusting his glasses upon his head. "Come on, guys. I respect what you do and all, but you can't just enter someone's house without knocking. I have a kid here." To his words, Jaida glanced up from the papers and gave a happy expression with her eyes. "Don't worry, we're both kids too, so it's alright." To her words, Theodore just blankly stared and muttered, "Wait, what?" "Jet, scan all these paragraphs and possible locations, cycle them all together, and give us your best possible estimation." Voyd asked into his helmet, proceeding to watch as a blue scan went over each paper he and Jaida flipped through. From the workshop, Jet began to process their findings, downloading the given information into his mind to make out the best guess to give them a lead. All these articles and reports describe the massive Rem events occurring near or relatively close to areas that have large thrift shops and sewer entrances, all collecting near the northern east hemisphere of Aurora. Jet exclaimed to the both of them as a map layout of the city appeared, with the northeast side flashing with a green shade in its diagram within their mask HUDs. "Perhaps you should both explore below the city as opposed to her top. The tunnel systems could very well be a great source of transferring such lethal items without being detected. That is my best estimation for where we should search next." Nodding, Voyd and Jaida stacked the articles back together and returned them to Theodore, who had heard the whole thing. A possible underground trade route? That was a theory I had for a while, but the likelihood of that in such a populated area seems implausible. Winona's father said, as he looked at the two heroes before him. "Nothing is implausible until proven otherwise. Thank you for your help, citizen," Jaida shouted as she took Voyd by the hand. "Seriously, thank you. If we find something, we'll make sure your city knows you've done a favor," Voyd added as Jaida began to glow. "Wait, how old are you two?" Theodore wanted to know, but before they could answer, Aurora's nights were gone with a bright warp. "Dad, I got the roll of newspaper. Where's the mouse?" Winona asked as she ran into her father's room, wearing pajamas and holding a rolled up wad of newspaper like a baseball bat. Looking at his daughter with baffled eyes, Theodore simply glanced around the room, being unable to say a thing. He stuttered before just throwing his arms up and letting the articles drop, whilst also letting his hands hit the sides of his legs. My creator, I am detecting a mass amount of closed space in your area. Have you and Miss Woods made it to the sewers? Jet asked, as both the Cosmic Angel and Blue Bullet warded their way through nearly knee-high, murky water. Yep, Jaida warped us right in without detection. We're in the area you suggested, but nothing really seems to be popping out. Voyd replied as the two of them used their visors to see their surroundings. Years, perhaps even decades, had passed since the system was first laid, and they have not been kind. The pipes, once smooth and efficient, were now encrusted with a thick, unidentifiable grime. The concrete cracked and crumbled, leaking a dark, oily substance that collected in stagnant pools. The air was thick and heavy, saturated with a stench that clung to everything it touched. It was a cocktail of decay, stagnant water, and the byproducts of countless businesses above. This was not the clean, sanitized world the duo liked to imagine exists below their city. Ew, the water's clumpy. Why is it clumpy? Jaida asked as both her and Voyd held hands through the walk, being thankful their helmets kept out the smell. Just don't think about it, sweetheart, was all Voyd could say as they moved along at a snail's pace. The sewer system groaned and sighed, the sounds of his laborious work echoing through the damp tunnels. Every flush of a toilet, every drain emptied, sent a fresh wave of debris through the ancient-looking pipes that surrounded them. It collected at every turn, forming barricades that impeded the flow of waste. Rodents and insects thrived in the dark, damp environment, navigating the maze with a confidence born of familiarity. They were the silent inhabitants, scavengers who picked through the unwanted remnants of human life. Well, if they really are down here, they sure as hell know where to hide, Voyd said as he scanned the walls with his stern sapphire eyes. Jaida, you think you could focus your subspace and try and detect a life force somewhere? We're gonna be walking in circles at this rate. Voyd questioned as he and Jaida halted in their tracks. I can give it a shot, but I don't think I'm gonna get much outside of some rodents. Closing her eyes and taking in a long breath, Jaida began to focus upon her surroundings. Like always, her vision became an outline of the stars and constellations, recreating the shapes and path before her view. The walls now twinkled, the water outlined with stars, making the murky world look fantastical as opposed to depressing. For a long time, Jaida stood, doing her best to get a read on the realm around her, when at last, she felt something. Penguins, she said. What? Voyd promptly asked, filling his head with an audible mechanical rev within his neck. Penguins. Much lower. Deeper. Hang on. Jaida appeared before warping her and Voyd to a much lower sector within the sewers. Landing outwards, the duo came to a wobbly landfall upon an extension platform, one that looked to have been used by workers years back. Its rusted metal bars and vent-grated platform creaked and wobbled, revealing the ground beneath them. Whoa, what the? Voyd whispered as he and Jaida turned their eyes downwards and fell silent to what they now saw. This wasn't the dank, stagnant image the duo typically associated with the sewers. Instead, a large square cutout section of the underground labyrinth had been meticulously converted into a makeshift laboratory. The air was thick with the scent of chemicals, and it was surprisingly clean, thanks to a series of jury-rigged exhaust fans that sucked the noxious flames into the surrounding pipes. There was graffitied walls, once slimy with decades of neglect, being now patched with salvaged metal and plastic, reflecting the harsh fluorescent glare of repurposed construction lights that shimmered a red haze. The heart of this operation was a cluster of interconnected red glowing glass vats and breakers, their surfaces coated with a gritty residue that shone under the unforgiving illumination. Twisting pipes, like metallic snakes, veined themselves across the floor and walls, carrying vicious red liquids between various stages of the process. The constant gurgling and hissing of the machinery created a strange, hypnotic hum for the duo, a soundtrack to the illegal alchemy being performed. The star of this chemical ballet was the substance itself. Rem, Voyd whispered. It wasn't the typical brown or white powder of most illicit drugs. Instead, it glimmered with an unnerving vibrancy, a hot, almost neon pink crystal that seemed to pulse within an inner light. Heaps of it, carefully separated by size and purity, were piled into disguised homeless shelter boxes, ready for distribution. The contrast between the eye-straining color of the crystals and the murky surroundings was jarring, almost surreal for the duo. The individuals who operated this underground factory were as much a part of its landscape as the pipes and vats, and they were a bizarre sight. The workers were penguins. Not woodland human penguins, actual, clearly trained penguins. Their beaked faces were etched with a strange blend of concentration and exhaustion. Their feathers were stained with the telltale marks of chemical exposure. They moved with a practiced efficiency, their flippers and little legs adept to the delicate dance of measuring, mixing, and monitoring. They honked and wanked in hushed tones, making the duo absolutely befuddled by the sight. This wasn't merely a manufacturing plant. It was a refuge, a hidden corner of the city where the rules of the outside world didn't apply. It was a world built on secrets, where the foulest waste of the city was transformed into the most alluring product. And like a hidden disease, it grew, unseen by the oblivious populace above. "Holy Bangonzas," Jaida whispered. Jet was right. It is coming from the sewer. But this place is ages old. Voyd mumbled as he took a look at his surroundings, noticing a pipe etched with the date of 1978 on its rusty side. An abandoned sector layers beneath the modern system? Who knew where this was? And how was it set up? Jaida asked, when all of a sudden, a figure walked into the center of a room, a big and large woodland human that silenced them both. It was a bear, a gargantuan polar bear that appeared to be some kind of mob boss. He wore a light pink tuxedo, its coat firm and tight, joined by a red tie, cherry brown pants, and a spiffy fedora upon his juicy fat head. The bear had on several golden rings, each tipped with a little brass rivet in case for a possible fight. Within the Ursurid's grizzled mouth was a cigar of the same drug, making his eyes a glowing pink shade for all to see. "Gentlemen," the bear began, his voice a low rumble. "The reports are in. We've had a very productive quarter. The reach, the volume, the returns, they all speak for themselves." A low murmur of approval rippled through the room. Around the bear, his penguins stood, flapping their dusty red flippers and chanted all the same wank wanks as the other. "However, success breeds complacency. We must remain vigilant. The attention we garner with these numbers is a double-edged sword. We must be smarter, more discreet. Less noise, so much more efficiency." The bear gestured to a stack of papers resting upon one of the nearby work tables, files upon files of routes and buyers. "I have a few adjustments I'd like to discuss." The room stiffened. "Penguin 27, I need a tighter grip on Sector 3. Penguin 42, let's explore some alternative routes. More inconspicuous options. 19, a friendly chat with the boys in blue wouldn't go amiss. We need to remind them who keeps the streets quiet." The air in the room shifted. The celebratory mood had faded, replaced by a sense of purpose, a reawakened hunger. This wasn't just a gathering celebrating their success. It was a reminder of the constant need to adapt, to be one step ahead of the law and their rivals. "Wait, I've heard of this guy. I believe this is the kingpin of the underworld, the Deadly Snow, Bryson Berryby," Jaida whispered, to which Voyd listened in with curious ears. "Seems like a big teddy bear," the spark replied, itching to just hop down and stop the big man mid-speech. "I wouldn't necessarily say that. Before you came along, I heard whispers about the Deadly Snow. He's a beast in and out. We gotta be careful," Jaida replied as the kingpin went on. "Oh, come on. If we were able to take down Lotus, we can take this guy on," Voyd returned as he slowly stood up. "True, but no killing. Remember? These are still human beings, not monsters," Jaida suddenly said as she reached for her boyfriend's shoulder. "Yes, I know. Your city, your rules. Besides, I don't think this dude plans universal domination. He just kinda seems like a dick." Voyd agreed with a nod to his beloved. "Our city. Jaida corrected, making Voyd smile as they both turned and leapt down with an audible landfall. Hey, Build-A-Bear! Sorry to just completely ruin your whole speech about being incognito, but it's time we put an end to this. Jaida shouted, causing the large bear to snap his bulbous head around with a growl, and for some of his penguins to scatter.
What the? Oh, it's you two.
He gruffed before fully turning his wide body to face the duo.
The Phantom of Aurora City and a new dopey sidekick. It was only a matter of time before our paths crossed.
Wincing, Voyd took a step forwards and threw his arms out at his sides, bellowing aloud for all to hear. Newsflash, Remhead! The name's the Blue Bullet, and that's the Cosmic Angel. Shut this operation down before we do it by force. The Spark shouted as Jet began to send an SOS signal from his internal system all the way to Sankson's police report.
Oh, come on now. Don't be so correction savvy. I assume you somehow managed to find this through good business?
Barrymore questioned, his tone sarcastic, his manner bleak, making the duo scrunch behind their helmets. Your business is a disease. You leech off the city like a parasite. We're here to exorcise you from it. No more Rem. Voyd restated their purpose, using words in such a way that made the bear chuckle.
Disease? How melodramatic. I prefer to think myself as providing a service. Demand is high, and where there's demand, there's an opportunity. Just good business. Surely a smart pair of cookies like yourselves understand the basics of capitalism.
The duo were dumbstruck by the bear's response, which spoke with the manner of a true businessman, one without empathy for nobody but himself. You build your fortune on addiction and despair. People are getting harmed because of you. You prey on the vulnerable. That's not business, bub. That's predation. Jaida spat, making the mobster sigh dramatically in his stance.
Always moralizing. You know, Phantom, from what I've seen, you are rather tiresome. People make their own choices. If they choose to partake, that's hardly my fault. I merely offer them a convenient option.
The Remhead reasoned as he released a glowing puff of smoke from his fuzzy lips. Your supply chains are built on broken lives. Your profits are stained with blood. Voyd stated, anger rising in his heart.
Blood? Well, isn't that putting things a bit poetically? You seem to see a lot of drama where I see only, shall we say, supply and consequence. I provide, they consume, and the world keeps spinning.
The duo with growing rage took a step forwards, their gazes piercing towards the massive polar bear that began to crack his knuckles that were the size of their heads. The world will spin without your poisonous influence. We've seen the damage firsthand. The families torn apart, the lives wasted. It ends tonight, Remhead. Jaida spat as her constellations began to flare under her armor. Beside her, Voyd got into a battle-readied stance, his fists raised and feet prepared.
Ends? Oh, Phantom, you're so naive. This isn't some high-stakes drama. This is a business. And business, as always, finds a way. You can take me down, sure, but someone else would have stepped into my place. I, my dear, I am merely a cog in that beautifully tragic machine.
With gestures to his penguins that remained, Remhead made sure they moved along to avoid the conflict that was about to commence.
Now, I believe we're done with the pleasantries. Let's see if your conviction is as strong as your words.
The fight began with a charge, not just from the Kingpin's thundering steps, but from both sides. Instantly, Jaida exploded into action, her hands erupting in twin jets of fire. turning the underground warehouse into a furnace. Beside her, Voyd ran headstrong towards the enemy. The angel warped, disappearing in a wink, only to reappear behind the Remhead, unleashing a wave of non-lethal hot flames at his back. The stench of burning fabric filled the air, but the bear barely flinched. His thick muscles rippled as he turned, grabbing a discarded metal pipe from the floor and swinging it with terrifying force at Jaida. Taking his chance, Voyd moved in. His hands traced intricate patterns in the air, drawing shimmering blue Nova runes that crackled with raw, spark-like energy. With a huff, he slammed his palms into the concrete floor. A line of glowing symbols erupted forwards like a magical tripwire. Remhead, caught off guard, was thrown off balance from the surge of crystal blue power, creating a mix of purple within the light. The mobster's pipe clattered to the ground, making the bear roar a sound of pure rage. He instantly lunged at Voyd, his fists like battering rams. Voyd now moved with an uncanny precision, deflecting the worst of the blows and using the momentum of the Kingpin's attacks to throw him off balance. Huffing, he summoned a protective circle of runes around himself, shimmering blue barriers that absorb the impact of the Remhead's powerful blows. Jaida now warped again, reappearing on the other side of the sewer's forgotten room. This time, she didn't attack. She focused her energy, drawing upon the ambient heat of the flames she had unleashed. The air around her shimmered and distorted, becoming almost unbearable to breathe. She was charging a full-scale attack. The Kingpin, fueled by adrenaline and a desperate desire to defeat what he could only deem to be rats, ignored the growing threat and concentrated his fury upon Voyd. He landed a powerful blow onto the Spark's arm, sending the runic shield flickering and backfiring, tearing the clothing away and revealing his left metallic arm beneath. Voyd staggered back in shock from his own lack of precision. He was getting cocky, and knew he couldn't hold him off forever.
What the hell?
The bear shouted, noticing the visible mechanical limb beneath. Scowling, Voyd, with his arm freed, shot out and quickly entangled the mob boss, using his limb as though it were a cobra constricting its prey.
Hey! What in God's name?
Barry cried as he threw a panicked punch towards the Spark, who merely ducked. Seeing Voyd under pressure, Jaida unleashed her attack, a blinding pillar of condensed fire that slammed into the Remhead, engulfing him in a short but stinging roaring inferno. It was her biggest attack yet, every fiber of her being focused in the one burning onslaught. The Remhead bellowed, his angered screams lost in the crackle of flames. To this, Voyd tossed the big bear into a backward stagger, his clothes gently charred and fur ashy from the heat. For a moment, it looked like the fight might have been over, but kingpins don't fall so easily. As the flames subsided, the Remhead was still standing, albeit barely. He was winded, the heat having taken its toll, but his eyes were blazing with a primal drugged-up fury. Reaching over, he took a handful of Rem from a table, crushed it, and proceeded to pour it into his mouth. To Voyd and Jaida's shock, they watched as he swallowed the crystal chunks. Within moments, the bear's eyes turned into a complete and powerful pink-red glow. His claws and even the back of his throat began to glow as well, all ending with a lunge and primal roar from the depths of his soul. Uh-oh! Voyd and Jaida cried in unison as their battle commenced once again. The first blow was a blur of motion. The Remhead, with surprising agility for his size, dropped to all fours and charged. A monstrous, ground-shaking ram, faster than anything Voyd and Jaida had anticipated. They both barely managed to leap aside, the force of the charge sending a tremor through their bones. Jaida responded instantly, a whip of fire crackling from her hands. The flames danced around the Remhead's thick leathery suit of a hide, but he barely flinched, roaring with annoyance rather than pain. He swiped a clawed hand, scattering the flames like embers, and then ripped a chunk of concrete flooring the size of a small car from the ground. With a grunt of effort, he hurled it at Jaida. The angel, with a burst of shimmering heat, teleported behind the stone, reappearing to the Remhead's left with another torrent of fire. This barrage was more concentrated, a scorching inferno that licked at his exposed fur. The Remhead cackled now, a sound edged with fury. He backpedaled, shaking off the flames, but his movements were now slowed. Voyd now seized the opportunity. He planted his hand on the floor once more, a series of glowing runes etching themselves into the concrete once more. These old spark symbols shimmered with their pale blue light, their power regaining the hum with the tunes of his mother's teachings. These kinds of runes were designed to slow and impede movement, and the Remhead definitely noticed. His next charge became sluggish, and he stumbled, momentarily disoriented. The Remhead, clearly growing frustrated with their coordinated assault, switched tactics. He bellowed another cackle, and with a surprising swiftness, he began tearing the warehouse apart. Tables, metal grids, and more concrete flew through the air like projectiles. Voyd was forced on the defensive, runes shifting and shimmering to deflect the debris, while Jaida, using her precision warps, weaved between the flying wreckage, creating pockets of flames to force the Remhead into a retreat. The pace of the fight was relentless, a brutal ballad of raw power and strategic agility. Voyd, despite his endurance, could feel the strain of maintaining the runes, the magic leeching away at his reserves. Jaida's fire, usually so effective, seemed to barely sting the Remhead now. The Kingpin was no fool. He recognized her teleportation and began to anticipate patterns. He launched a table directly at where she was about to reappear, catching her off guard. Gasping, Jaida was sent tumbling across the floor, the flames around her sputtering momentarily. She was still unaffected, rising to her feet with a snarl. The Remhead roared, charging at Voyd now again, and he knew he had to buy his love time. He braced himself, and as the Remhead slammed into him, a powerful energy barrier formed by the runes sprung up, absorbing much of the impact. The attack, however, was still enough to send Voyd staggering, but he had accomplished his goal. In that instant, Jaida was there, a brilliant phoenix of flame bursting forth. This time, it wasn't just flames. This was scorching heat, enough to melt even metal and reduce concrete to ash. She focused it upon the Remhead's face. She never liked getting this physical. For cases such as this, some acts were necessary, for the mob boss wasn't backing down. The Remhead finally cried in true pain, a high-pitched screech that echoed through the warehouse. His rampage faltered. His face was slapped with the sting of a nasty sunburn. He stumbled back, clutching his eyes that now watered. "Die, you little brat!" He groaned. Taking their chance, both Voyd and Jaida leapt forwards and uppercut the bear, sending him sprawling up and crashing hard into a set of empty tables. At last, leaving him dazed enough to not bother getting back up. Man, Blue, are you okay? Jaida asked with a turn, raising her hands up to caress the Spark's helmet sides. I'm fine. Fortunately, my suit's damaged. Maybe I should take the opportunity to create a more stretchable fabric for my arms. Voyd suggested, as the sounds of several police officers began to storm into the depths of the sewers. Yeah, probably. Jaida replied, as they both turned to see Sankson and the boys in blue bursting in through a rusted door with their weapons drawn. Now out on the surface, the Remhead walked towards a massive SWAT truck with cuffs locked on his hands behind his back. Beside him, officers guarded, while city folk gathered around to watch the scene. CNN and other news outlets were all reporting on the massive drug bust, leaving the bear to just growl at everyone. As he approached the big truck, the Angel and the Bullet stood atop its boxed hood, looking down at the bear who just frowned. "Off to the Obsidian, huh? You know, I think you probably got more enemies in there than we do," Jaida said as her and Voyd shared a fist bump.
"If you two believe that this will be more than a minor inconvenience,"
the bear grumbled before being cut off. "Hey, sorry, big guy. We gotta go. Getting a lot of mixed reactions from the lovely Northernsiders here. But we wish you luck, Remy. We think you may need it." Voyd said with a chuckle before summoning his wings, scooping Jaida up, and flying off into the night.
You idiots! You have no idea what kind of pool you've just started to swim in!
The large bear screamed as he was now being forced into the truck.
No idea!
He bellowed one last time before the door slammed shut. As the sun began to rise upon a new day, Voyd and Jaida stood in the kitchen, watching the TV as it broadcasted them in a positive light for once, thanking them for finding the source to the REM's main location. The duo had even slipped in a little note to the cops about Theodore, who was also thanked in the broadcast. "Aw yeah, we did it, Blue!" Jaida cheered as she and Voyd gave each other a high five. "Heck yeah, we did!" And of course, with a bit of help. The Spark replied as he gestured towards both Theodore on the TV as well as Jet, who slowly rolled up to them, still with a chicken resting on his plastic scalp. "This calls for celebration. Perhaps I shall cook pasta tonight with your guided recipe, Miss Woods," the robot suggested as he gestured towards the stove where Kot was making breakfast with Pofnu waiting eagerly beside him. "Sounds like a plan, big man." Jaida gave the okay with a wink and thumbs up, when all of a sudden, Nock entered the room.
"Hey everyone, notice anything different?"
he asked, making them all turn to look upon him, noticing an ugly brown wig sitting upon his head. For a long time, they just stared, all with the look of raw horror on their faces. To best describe the mechanic, he was as if a boy band member got hit by a bus and was forced to wear glasses. To say the least, nobody liked it. Even Pofnu started to tear up from the sheer horror before her puppy dog eyes. "I retract my statement from last night. For the love of all the gods we pray to, please remain bald." Jet shouted aloud, as everyone was now forced to bear a mental scar till their final breath. Rolling down a dark hall only lit by green fluorescent wall tubes went a short robot. The robot was short, stocky, and had a unicycle wheel below himself. It had two glowing lime eyes with a latte cup in a right gloved metal hand. As it traveled further, it suddenly stopped before a door that opened up to reveal a massive laboratory. The air in the room hummed with a low, almost incomprehensible drum, a constant vibration that resonated deep within the little drone. The room was a symphony of gunmetal grays and blacks. A stark, industrial landscape was punctuated by the glow of emerald green neon. These weren't mistakenly placed. They traced the edges of workbenches, outlined intricate machinery, and pulsed within the delicate glass tubing that snaked across the ceiling like jungle vines. This wasn't the dusty, cluttered laboratory of an old, haggy engineer. This was something else entirely. The surfaces gleamed, polished to an almost mirror-type shine, reflecting the eerie green light in distorted, mesmerizing patterns. Every tool, every instrument was pristine, arranged with precision. It was the lab of someone with limitless resources, a playground where science wasn't a struggle, but an artistic endeavor. The long and slender workbenches were populated with an array of unidentifiable devices, complex parts of glowing machines, unfinished robots, and articulated, intricate mechanisms that buzzed with electricity. Above, intricate scaffolding held more of these robots, their wiry form silhouetted against the neon-lit ceiling. The lighting, casting a deep shadow that seemed to deepen the already eerie atmosphere, creating an illusion of unseen depths within the relatively confined space. Along the walls, a series of tall, cylindrical tanks filled with a lime green fluid. Lined up like silent nights inside, were more floating mechanical forms, bathed in the green light, appearing to be in some state of suspended animation. Their silhouettes, though obscured, hinted at something strange, something beyond the boundaries of the mundane. Within the center of all of this was a hyper-advanced chair made from some advanced resources. In it sat a figure masked in the light, looking upon a massive flat screen that showed the Remhead being arrested, alongside what was security camera footage from the fight within the sewers.
Your drink, sir? Care for some whipped cream to top it?
The robot asked as it rolled up and placed the latte beside the mysterious figure sitting. Fascinating, they said upon pausing the screen at the part of the fight where Voyd entangled his arm around the Kingpin. Very fascinating, they repeated as the robot too looked at the screen.
What are you gathering, Doctor?
The machine questioned as the figure leaned forwards with a curious attitude. The Phantom's new friend. Unlike her, this blue bullet seems peculiar. It's almost as if... The mysterious figure muttered as he began to scan the image for all of its little details. That the city's new champion is anything but human. We'll be keeping a close tab on this one, yes. Reaching down, the man masked in green snagged his latte and took a delectable sip, giving a little smile and all. Latte Bate, prepare the elevator for Sector 7. I want to learn more about our new friend. Prepare Project Shallow. To his words, the robot named Latte Bate saluted the figure before rolling off towards the hall. Smirking, the man sat with one leg rested over the other as he eyed the footage down once more, feeling nothing but excitement towards who or what the blue bullet could possibly be.